Welcome to another episode of the Voices of the Learning Network podcast. I, as always, am your intrepid American host, Erin Donovan, and I am so pleased today to welcome a team to talk through the topic of teaming up. So first we have Natalie Cregan-Evans from McReal. She is the partnership manager. And then we have Tim Powell-Jones. Wait for this title. He is the principal immersive learning designer, again, at McReal. Thank you both for joining me today. Welcome, good afternoon, good morning, all of the rest of those pleasantries. Natalie, Tim, my first question is, why learning? Why don't you just go work for a bank or something? What are you doing? What are you doing with your lives in learning?
I'll go first because I actually used to work for a bank a few years ago, just as just on the counter, and I've taken a kind of a bit of a winding journey to end up at Make Real. I've worked at a couple of tech companies as well over the past few years. I think with learning and with what Make Real does in particular is we are really interested in making, this is going to sound corny, but making real change and making real impact. And that's it's even in the sort of last 6 months that I've been at the company and seeing the projects that we've worked on, the projects we are going to be working on, we do make a huge difference. And it's really rewarding to hear from the clients that we've worked with, the results that we've produced on so many of our projects, the improvements that we've made, and just the sheer variety of work. So it's learning whether that's kind of like the practical skills, health and safety, or customer like conversations, customer service skills, all the way through to practicing things like empathy and handling difficult conversations, to the point where when I first started, I tried out some of the projects that we've created and actually found I was learning from them as well. So that for me in the past few months has already been really rewarding experience. And I think Tim's done a lot of work on some of those projects as well. So that's been really good for me.
I love it. Tim, why learning for you?
Natalie's answer is so much better than mine. So why learning? I think, to be honest, I fell into learning by accident really pretty soon after leaving university, because I went into teaching and I liked talking to people. I liked as Natalie says, kind of making a difference and being able to see and really see the difference that what you do makes, not just in face-to-face, but increasingly in the digital things that we do as well. The more contact we have with people who've gone through our experiences and kind of seeing that is really great. And also, it gives a great opportunity to be creative in an interesting way, to be creative within a set of constraints, to try and achieve something for people. And I find that very rewarding.
Love it. I love it. Wonderful. Well, thank you again both for joining us. We are going to jump in because this is one of my favorite topics. Teaming up. Talk to me about it. What does that mean? How do we team up?
So it's a good question. I think it comes back to what I was just saying, actually, that I used to be a face-to-face teacher and I really liked it. I really liked delivering things in the classroom. I really liked seeing the way that people interacted with each other and the way that we were able to actually come up with quite interesting things in a classroom through human interaction. And that is something that I always try and bring into digital learning when we do it, because I think, we can do brilliant things with digital learning, right? We can sort of practice things in VR. We can use AI to give feedback to people that we've never been able to do before. And all this stuff's really, really great. But there's always this danger that you end up by yourself, sat in front of a computer screen by yourself, and then there's something missing. And I think that there's something missing is what we learn from other people when we're learning with other people. And I think sometimes that can be explicitly as a team. You know, you're a team of people working towards a goal that you're going to get. And then sometimes that can be that actually the other people there with you have something, they have knowledge, right? They have knowledge and experience that may be beyond that we're able to give through teaching or through design. So those are the two things, the two sort of strands are teaming up.
So this is going to be a hard question. So we're in the digital world, unlike,
Yeah.
and I was a teacher as well. And there was that excitement of trying to come up with a solution together. So Tim, how do we do that? How do we create a natural sense of collaboration that's not forced in the digital world? I mean, easy,
Well,
just solve it.
yeah, it's fine, no problem. Well, I guess the question is, what is the digital world? So I think one of the things that we've been working on over the past couple of years is a game called Citizen it's for teenagers in the UK to build their understanding of civil engineering, right? And we've made a really cool game, and it's a city builder kind of game. So anyone who is of a similar age to me and is familiar with things like SimCity, unfortunately for me, it's the original SimCity. Then you kind of know how a city builder game works, and we did a lot of work making this game really nice. But where the learning happens in that, and in probably some of the other experiences to talk about, is not necessarily in the game. Like they're playing the game, they're in a room together, huddled around a computer, and really where the learning is in the discussions that happen around that. So the digital experience really is a prompt for people to start talking about the content, start engaging with the content, and then beyond that, actually being able to then go to their teacher and ask things, to be able to go and ask a mentor from industry, which was part of the game actually, that they can say, well, I don't really understand how sustainability works in building. Can you tell me a bit more? So yeah, it's that thing of what's happening around the game. How is this digital experience deployed in a way that's going to start triggering the conversations that we want to see, that where the actual learning takes place?
So this gives me two interesting questions. Number one, when we talk about team, you just mentioned teachers, mentors, industry partners, peers. That's our learning team. Anyone we're missing, how do you build that? So you have great content, you have a great prompt. How do you prompt them to team up?
How do you prompt them to team up? Well, I mean, a team can be anything. That's one example of a team. That's a team which actually had a few quite well-defined roles. But a team could just be two people. A team could be anyone depending on the experience. And how do you get them to do it? You tell them how to do it. You define it. You give people roles, and you make sure that everyone knows what they're doing. You know, it doesn't need to be a big deal in terms of giving them reams and reams of A4 paper saying who they are. But as long as they have a pretty good idea of like, okay, I'm in charge of the finances for this, I'll just think about that. And then people will organically sort of slip in and out of those roles to some extent. But the more you're able to scaffold and give structure, then the better it tends to work.
And so as you look at your team, and so often in learning development in the past, we were very siloed. You did this, you did this, you did this. We had these massive waterfall plans that were probably not ideal for actual development. So when you think about your team at Make Real, how have you developed that? What are you doing to build your corporate team in a way that we're all working together rather than we're all producing separately?
I shall answer a little bit, and then I might ask Natalie to kind of come in on that one as well. Well, I mean, it's similarly like people have roles, right? So if we've got someone who's project managing, someone who's designing, people who are developing, and people who are doing art, and there is often a bit of crossover between those roles. But I think it's important just to make sure everyone knows what they're doing on a project and everything's very well sort of set through and organized. But then it's being able to have good conversations, being able to have the sort of personal relationships with people. I mean, so I'm not a developer, right? So I have the most basic Unity skills in the world. So in order for me to be able to design something and for it to be actually quite a complex piece, I've got to have good conversations with whoever's particularly coding it. And, everyone's a bit different. So I design and slightly differently to some of my colleagues at Make Real. Like, we all sort of approach things slightly differently and all the developers approach things slightly differently. So it's sort of knowing how you work together with that individual person or the individual people on the team. Yeah. Natalie, would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think that Make Real it's a fairly small studio. We're not like a huge company with like loads and loads of people, but we all, again, I've only been with the company for a few months really, but everyone works really well together. And I think there's a really sort of strong culture of everyone's open to, if you've got any questions or need to bounce ideas off someone, pretty much everyone will have time for you to do that, or they'll make the time, or if they can't help you, they'll point you in the direction of someone who can. And I think that's been a really strong point around the culture at Make Real, because our head office is in Brighton, but not necessarily everyone is based down there. I actually live in the West Midlands, so I'm about 4 hours drive away from the head office. But I know if I have a question or I need some help for writing a case study on a project, I know I can speak to someone and someone's going to help me out with that, which is a bit different from like the learning, development and design. But I think that I guess the culture is really, really important to make sure that everyone is all pulling together in the same direction. And I think Make Real is really good at that. We all know what we want to achieve. And I think everyone is always working towards the same sort of objective. You don't feel that people are kind of like bumping up against each other or clashing or anything. So I think that has a big impact on how well we work and how well the projects we work on go together. And I think also we've got a very good sort of learning culture internally. So when we do put together a project or we complete a project, we are always sort of sharing it with everyone and taking away the things that went well and the things that maybe could have gone better, and always working to learn from those as well.
I love that. So you have a strong culture, you have a strong team, you've been very prescriptive for your users, and you've said, here's roles, responsibilities, we're going to scaffold this for you. But we have someone else in the room. We have our major stakeholder. How, especially as an external content provider, or if for me, an external consultant, how can I bring those stakeholders and make them feel like they're part of the team rather than they're hiring a team? Do you have any strategies for that? Either one.
It's different for different stakeholders. But I think it's just, in general, I would say it's taking them on the journey with us. So involving people, sorry, that'll sound great on the podcast. No, involving people at a really early stage and getting buy-in from those stakeholders so that they know what it is that we're doing, and that they feel that they've had chance to feed in. So, we just finished a really interesting project, which is quite a fun team-based game, but that's got people in VR and it's got people on a tablet at the same time. And to be able to do something actually that was quite complex and make it seem simple, then we had to speak to people from all over there, some very specific people in their organization, to make sure that on one hand it's going to work for them, and then on the other hand the content that we were doing using around cybersecurity was the right thing. So by getting people involved, getting people excited, making sure everyone's voice is heard, is probably how we do it.
Natalie, any other tips?
No, I think that Tim covered it really well. I think, like Tim said, the important thing is getting all the stakeholders involved at an early stage. When people who should have been involved kind of get involved later on in the process, that's where things can kind of sometimes get a bit unstuck, and like expectations might have been a bit different. So I think that's probably like the key thing, really.
Fantastic.
Being able to say no nicely. Because
do you have tips for that, Tim? I think that's the $1 million question.
well, I'm very English, so it's very, actually don't put this on the podcast. That's a very interesting idea. Yes.
I love it. Well, I have one last question for you. What are you most excited about in 2024? This should relate to learning. It should be appropriate for the podcast. But it can be teaming or not teaming. What gets you up in the morning and just gets you like, we're ready to go. This is going to be such a great innovation. I mean, no pressure.
Oh God, we're going to have to be really boring and say artificial intelligence, aren't we? Like everybody else, I'm sure, on your podcast. But it is one of the things that we've just done is actually using diagnostic artificial intelligence to be able to give feedback on what people are saying. And I think that's something that I find really exciting because, going back to the classroom, if you're in a classroom and you say something, and if it's total nonsense, the teacher can very nicely say, that's a very interesting point you've made there, but how about thinking about it like this, which you've never really had in digital learning before. But one of the things we're able to do with AI is to be able to provide that level of feedback. So if someone's having a conversation, if someone records themselves, we can give them feedback on how they might have been perceived through emotion recognition. We can give them feedback on, like, actually how well, like, did they answer the question? Was the content that they put across right? So that's really cool. And we're looking at different ways of integrating that already in several different things, whether that's, the desktop one that we just released or virtual reality ones coming soon as well.
Very exciting. Natalie, what's getting you up in the morning?
I think, as Tim says, AI, but I think as well, we do quite a lot of development for like virtual reality apps, and there's new headsets. Like Quest 3 came out last year. That's got much better pass through. So mixed reality applications are very interesting. And then Apple Vision Pro, it's not necessarily something that anyone can get their hands on, but I think that's going to keep moving the needle on what immersive experiences can look and feel like. And I think the developers, our side, are already sort of thinking about how can the learning experiences we create have even more value added to them by this kind of technology. But that said, it's always very much about what's the learning trying to achieve. It's not, oh, we've got this cool shiny headset, what can we do with it for the sake of it? It's like, okay, how's it actually going to make the experience more valuable for the people learning? So I'm really excited to see what the guys come up with on that, and then be able to do some work to hopefully produce case studies, post about it on LinkedIn, just get people excited about it like we are.
Well,
Plus one for pass through.
No, please, no, jump in.
Pass through is like that's a thing as well. I just like to agree with that because there's so many interesting things that we can do with that. Like just thinking about equipment training and being able to get that blend of actually the training world and the real world. Forgot about that, Natalie. that is very exciting.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about helping people learn, and whether it's the boring tool of AI or VR or any of these new innovations coming out. I mean, it's all about the learner. So I think that that's very, very cool. Listen, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Tim and Natalie's information is in the show notes. Make Reel's information is in the show notes. Reach out to learn more. Thank you for listening. And Voice of the Learning Network is out.